Paxton came out and endorsed George, and then a few minutes after that, Rinaldi endorsed George. So clearly this was coordinated. This was planned. But those two supportive figures, I think, kind of puts him in pole position, at least for the moment. Things could change.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a horse race term, I believe.
And a racing term, like a car racing term, motorsport.
Well, I think it started with horses.
Probably, as horses existed before
yes,
cars. But,
exactly, yeah. And horse racing existed before car racing.
Obviously, Brad, horses were before cars.
Thanks for putting the final nail on that.
I'm sure to mansplain, Bradley.
Oh, yes.
Happy Friday, folks. Welcome back to the Weekly Roundup. I'm here with Brad, Cameron, and Matt.
I need to stop you right there.
Okay.
Oh.
I just got notice from the boss lady that I am now off today. I'm excused. It's excused absence because it's opening day. And right here in Slack, there is an excuse slip with my name on it. So I'm good
yours?
to go, right?
Cameron, as the former collegiate baseball player, didn't get one?
Cameron didn't even know it was opening day today.
Cameron, yeah.
Yeah,
But
just throw me on there. I can give some play-by-play or something.
Looks like Rob's going to have to write all the articles today.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm excited for you, Brad.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
Another year will probably be terrible.
Wait, so who plays today? Tell me what opening day.
Everyone plays today.
Everyone plays on opening day?
Pretty much, I think. Yeah. That's why it's called opening day.
Well, yes, but the opening day could mean that it's the beginning and teams start to play, but not everyone plays.
Everyone, from my understanding, plays.
Yeah, my understanding, most teams are going to be.
For a while, it used to be the Reds, Cincinnati Reds, were the first team to play each season since they were the first Major League Baseball team. But that's not the case anymore. So I suppose it's possible there's a team or two that's not playing today.
The Cincinnati Reds were the first?
Cincinnati Redlegs, yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Do you feel proud about that? That's kind of a cool thing.
I mean, I'm not a Reds fan, but
Cincinnati,
it's cool.
Yeah. That's cool.
Cincinnati's a great baseball
That's
town.
right, because you're a Dodgers fan.
No.
No.
We have to go over this again.
Oh, man. Have we ever explained why I always call you a Dodgers fan?
Yes, you do every time
Okay, great.
you bring this
Then
up.
I'm going to leave it alone. Cameron, are you excited at all for opening day? You didn't know about it, so I guess not.
No, I haven't been watching too much sports over the last few years.
You're more into reading really jargony, esoteric academic papers.
That's
Which,
very
hey,
true.
someone has to do it. I guess.
Someone has to do it.
Guys, I'm really excited for your Send Me Some Stuff episode. I'm so pumped.
I
haven't heard it yet.
Oh, yeah. Well, we get into all sorts of stuff. Everything from AI to ESG to the speaker's race. So.
Did you guys bicker at all? Was there any bickering? Did Bradley get angry?
Oh, I don't think we bickered, but there was a depth of conversation that was there that I think people will enjoy.
That's awesome.
We go into the issues.
The dynamic between y'all isn't so much bickering. It's just chatting it up.
It's true.
You two, there's a long-running feud that I think everyone is aware of.
Yes, totally. But sometimes Brad just gets a little cranky, so I didn't know if the crankiness came out on the pod.
It's me.
That's undeniable.
That's my problem.
Yes, it is. But Monday, folks, Send Me Some Stuff. Brad and Cameron's podcast. First episode's coming out.
Is that when it's coming out, Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's edited. It's ready. Maslin killed it.
I'm sure we're going to be putting out a short preview beforehand.
I think
maybe.
so. Yeah.
If that's going to be any indication of what the pod is, people should tune in because I call myself a cyborg in that.
Oh, great. I'm excited about that.
So people should get excited.
People should get excited. That's awesome. Matt said that he's excited about opening day for the sake of the Astros. So Matt's an Astros fan. Which then I said Brad's Little League team is called the Astros, which bothers you a little bit.
I just wanted them to choose something original, but they went with, especially because there are kids that are Rangers fans on the team.
But what
and their heart sank when the Astros was.
They could pick any name. It didn't have to be a.
No, they could pick any name. Last year we were the Red Vipers.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask us.
Yeah.
Matt went like that. Matt, you excited for opening day?
Partially.
Matt's a little sad, and understandably so, because I forgot to tell him that he's on camera today. And so here he is.
Not terribly pleased with my editor at the moment.
And for those who don't remember, we are now offering the weekly Roundup on video. Oh, Matt, you're a trooper. Thanks for bearing with me. You have wonderful wood paneling walls behind you. It looks great. I do miss the hat, though. Matt started with a hat. The hat's gone.
He took the hat off?
He took the hat off.
The hat was great.
It was great. Well,
I was just wearing it because I thought it might make Brad angry.
What?
Why did the hat make me angry?
Brad, the most innocuous things make you angry.
Okay, but that's really random.
Yeah.
Me mentioning the weather the other day seemed to work, so I figured, the hat might put him over the edge too.
Are we
I am
gonna?
full
We are
on
not.
going down the
We're
weather
not
route
gonna
in
do
my
that.
newsletter.
Okay.
We won't rehash it on the pod, but I am recapping it in my newsletter. So, folks, Editor's Corner out today.
See the hat again?
What?
Do you want to see the hat again?
I would, yes. Oh, good, it's within reach. There we go. See, our West Texas guy.
Yeah.
It just fits the vibe.
Me and my natural habitat.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Okay, folks. Well, now that we're 6 minutes in, let's go ahead and get into the news.
Probably start.
Brad, let's start with you. We're past the primary, and we got the runoffs coming up next, and they're coming very soon. Give us a rundown of where we're at with the different races that are on the ballot.
It does feel very soon, but it's really actually kind of far away. At least I would, if I were
all relative.
someone on these campaigns, having to run for what, 2 months?
Yeah, it's 2 months.
3 months, almost 3 months, two and a half. 2.5 months after running a grueling campaign in the primary, I would be.
Which is essentially the length of the primary is 2.5 months. It's like
That's true.
For
Fair
all
point.
intents and purposes of when ads are run, money's spent. It doesn't really happen before the new year, so
No.
you kind of got 2-month-long stints there.
Fair point. Fair point. Well, there are 13 GOP runoffs for state legislative races on the May 28th ballot. Those are the biggest ones to watch, I think. The clash over the Texas House specifically is what everyone's been watching. There are a handful of incumbents facing primary challenges, and at the top of the list is Dade Phelan versus David Covey in that speaker's race we've talked a lot about. That's massively important. The biggest example of this ongoing civil war within the Republican Party circle of tech in Texas. And there's going to be so much money dropped into that race. It's just massively important for both sides. Next, there are 4 school choice focused races. HD1 with Gary Van Devers, the incumbent, against Chris Spencer. HD33, Justin Holland, the incumbent, against Katrina Pearson. HD44, John Kemple, the incumbent, against Alan Schoolcraft. HD58, Dwayne Burns against challenger Helen Kerwin. This is where Governor Abbott's coming into play most. Obviously, school choice is the biggest issue, and he along with the Club for Growth and a few other school choice PACs, including the AFC Victory Fund, have all jumped in headlong into this fight, trying to flip enough seats to get a majority in the House to support whatever the governor decides as his preferred school choice plan. And he announced last week at TVPF's Policy Summit that they have 74 votes. So they need 2 more. And he doesn't want to just get 2 more. He wants.
Do you agree with that math?
I think that's probably pretty close. And frankly, I think depending
it's
on.
pretty dynamic. That's the.
Right.
Yeah.
And it depends on what the proposal is, right? Because there are members that end up voting against this plan in November that would have been for it, provided a couple of changes had been made. Now, the governor didn't want those changes, so obviously that was a non-starter, at least at that point. But, if we get to the point where we have a proposal and it has some more guardrails, you might see members that were against flip to voting for. But if he flips these seats, or any significant number of them, he's going to have the 76 votes needed plus some margin. And that'll be some significant leeway for him. So I think he's pretty right on the math, at least at the moment. Abbott's camp, the Club for Growth, through its School Freedom Fund and the AFC Victory Fund, announced this week that the trio had collectively raised 8 figures in dollars to defeat the remaining House Republican incumbents and runoffs who voted against the education savings accounts back in November. Club for Growth also announced this week that they placed a $4 million ad buy, and that is against the collection of these 4 races, school choice focused races. So the big money's already coming in. You're going to see big money come in on the other side too, though, through the Charles Butt public education PAC chiefly, but other places as well. It definitely will not amount to as much as this pro-school choice coalition will bring in, but
just the political wins of this cycle.
Exactly, yeah. And the members that are swimming up current against this, they're in for a fight, and they know it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have incumbency and name ID, but we saw what happened in the primary, and a lot of members who voted against this went down. And so it's just going to be an uphill fight for them. But expect Charles Butt to come in big for them. Some other more incumbent-focused organizations like the Associated Republicans of Texas, I'm sure, will get involved pretty heavily, especially now that we are focused down on 13 races rather than 50 that were on the ballot. So there's a lot fewer outlets for this large amount of money. And so get ready, constituents of these districts, because TV ads, mailers, door knockers, it's going to be just nonstop for the next 2 months.
Absolutely. And I do want to plug Holly's piece really fast. Yeah. Holly wrote a piece this week about that HEB CEO, Charles Butt, and his involvement in Texas politics at large, and how several GOP county parties have adopted resolutions criticizing him and his involvement in this political climate right now, and also referencing back previous issues that he's involved himself in, whether it be sanctuary cities or all-age drag shows, those kinds of issues as well. So definitely worth going and checking out Holly's coverage on that. Do you have any predictions for the runoff spread? And Cameron, I want Cameron in on this too.
It depends on. It's all about turnout, which it always is, right? That's a joke. But
I was wondering if you were saying that in seriousness, and I was going to give you a lot of crap.
Here, though, there's a barometer with the returns we saw in the primary, and it's just a question of who can get their supporters out, get them fired up enough to be dedicated enough to go vote in this off-rate election, because Trump's not on the ballot, right? So you're not going to have the hardcore Trump voters, unless they're also very invested in these races, they're not also going to be voting. And so that is probably going to hurt the challengers to some degree. Whether it's enough to flip the script, who knows? But runoffs always have lower turnout just because it's a less significant election, or at least less significant in the number of things that are on the ballot. And you're not going to have the presidential race there. So that's interesting, something to watch. You're also going to have incumbents try and turn out, especially in the school choice races, turn out teachers, people that are involved specifically in the education in school districts. They're a motivated constituency to vote against vouchers, education savings accounts, whatever you want to call it. But, that's going to have to counterbalance the broader political wind that we're seeing with this pro-school choice movement within the Republican Party electorate. So there's that. There's a handful of open seats, one of which is SD30, which you've covered, Cameron. What do you think is a notable factor to watch in that one?
Well, just what I've been seeing recently over the past, 3-4 weeks is with Yarborough, he seems to be trying to play to win. I see him on X, posting, he was tweeting through the State of the Union address, and I thought that was interesting. He's really trying to be out there, and with Hagenbu, he appears to be a ghost. I haven't seen him all that much, or if at all, on social media. And that's where I primarily get my information is on social media. I'm not sure what he's doing in the district. That could be something completely different. But just what I've seen, it seems as though Yarborough has really, put himself out there in recent weeks.
And the dynamic between Hagenbu has all the top level endorsements from Trump and Dan Patrick and Abbott and all those, but then Yarborough has support from all these more local level grassroots organizations, and that obviously propelled Yarborough pretty well in the primary. And it was, how many points did it finish between them? A couple?
Yeah.
It was very close.
Yeah,
it wasn't close. Hagenbu was not close to avoiding a runoff and eclipsing 50%.
Yeah.
Which itself, especially for the guy that's the handpicked successor by Dan Patrick
in the Senate, who runs the Senate, and also take into consideration too how quickly Hagenbu got into the race and entered the race, and how late Yarborough was to get in as well, right? He was a candidate that I think a lot of folks watching thought would be the third place candidate in the runoff, and he outperformed that significantly, making it into the runoff and being very close to Hagenbu in a lot of the different areas of the district.
Yeah. Something else to watch. There are 3, I think, runoffs that are probably impeachment focused. Incumbents that voted for the school choice, so they're not getting opposed by Abbott, but they voted for impeachment, and that's HE 61, incumbent Frederick Frazier against Carissa Richardson. Now that one's especially notable because Frazier is Paxton's actual representative in the House, so a huge axe to grind there. HG 64, Lynn Stuckey against Andy Hopper, and then Stephanie Click in HG 91 against David Lowe, and those last two are rematches from 22. And so,
big deals.
Oh yeah, and especially Stuckey against Hopper was very close last time.
Well, and I came across this tweet from Beau French, the chairman of the Tarrant GOP. He said he's going to be hosting debates in the lead up. So I think that might be interesting if that, if there's clips taken out of there or people say things and they can put it on mailers or whatever it is. And so Stephanie Click and David Lowe will be debating. Cheryl Bean, John McQueenie will be debating.
That's another big, it's a big race.
And Craig Goldman and John O'Shea.
That's an interesting one to watch too. And that's on the federal side. That's for Congress.
Yeah.
But that was, Goldman was feeling comfortable that he was going to hit 50 and he didn't quite hit it. And O'Shea managed to finish second and push him to a runoff. That's going to be fascinating to watch. And then another one on the Democratic side, Sean Theory in a runoff against
House District 146.
Is it Amanda Edwards? I can't remember.
No, it's I could pull it up, but it's not Amanda Edwards.
But that's notable because she did buck her party on two specifically huge issues, the gender modification ban, and then I believe the Reader Act. She voted for that as well. Yeah,
well, really with the gender mod issue that she voted against the party line on that one, she gave that big speech, and that went viral, and it appears she's gotten a lot of positive feedback online from it and from prominent individuals, but it's not
the center-right folks.
Yeah, the center-right folks, but it hasn't played well with the Democratic base. So
Lauren Ashley Simmons.
Yep. Thank you. So yeah, it's going to be a wild ride the last 2 months of this, and I'm sure whenever it's done, everyone's going to be very glad that finally it's over with. Even obviously the ones who lose are going to be upset, but this thing has been grueling, and everyone is just sick of it.
Yeah. I was talking to a pollster earlier this week, and he basically was just like, I'm just excited to get, he's a Republican pollster, right? I mean, these pollsters usually work for one party or another, have affiliation to one party or another, and he basically said, I'm just excited to get to the general so we can beat up on some Democrats. Like, it's fair, right? I mean, these pollsters on either side of the aisle, they're just, primaries are tough, and relationships can get really tough. So.
Well, and after redistricting, there's not a lot of competitive races in the general.
Yeah.
Now, there will be statewide races, right? But in terms of these House seats, or especially the Senate seats, there's one Senate seat that is going to be interesting to watch. I think it's 27. That's Morgan LaMantia against Adam Hinojosa, the Republican.
Yeah.
And then there's maybe 3 or 4 in the House that are going to be notable to watch. But other than that, the battleground is in the primary, and especially the Republican primary, and that's exactly what we've seen.
Yeah, totally. Well, we spent a lot of time on the runoff, so we're going to run through our other stories here. Brad, thank you for that. Cameron, thanks for joining in. We're going to go with your story here, Cameron, next. The legal disputes regarding the abortion pill have reached the Supreme Court. Tell us about what happened during oral arguments this week.
Yeah, so the drug at the center of this controversy, mifepristone, it was initially approved by the
A few other worthy mentions in the background of this case was that the State Securities Board had fined Paxton $1,000 and the federal government opted against bringing the equivalent federal charges against him, which made the state deciding to pursue the case even that much more unusual. Fast forward, one of the two prosecutors recently pushed for a deal to be offered to Paxton, in which his counterpart, Special Prosecutor Brian Weiss, disagreed. With an April 15th court date finally set and in Harris County, a venue most would agree benefits the prosecution, Weiss stood his ground only weeks ago, firmly committed to taking Paxton to trial. Then, in a 180-degree turn this week, Weiss, along with Paxton's defense attorney Dan Cogdell, announced the pretrial diversion deal. Under the terms of the deal, Paxton must undergo 15 hours of continuing legal education in ethics, perform 100 hours of community service in his home base of Collin County, and pay upwards of $300,000 in restitution. Once these terms are met, the charges will be officially dropped and no admission of guilt is made by Paxton on his part. Both Paxton and Cogdell issued statements on the deal, echoing similar sentiments that they are glad that this legal saga is behind them. Weiss addressed reporters, saying that his job as a prosecutor is not to convict, but to see that justice is done.
Absolutely. Matt, thanks for your coverage there. Certainly a big piece of news and something we've been keeping an eye on for a long time, and most folks in and around Texas politics have been engaged with for over a decade. So wild. Wild to see this all end up this way. And Matt, thank you so much for covering that for us and breaking it down. Cameron, we're coming to you. Longtime Texas Congresswoman Kay Granger has already announced her retirement, but now she's saying that she'll be stepping down from a very important chairmanship in D.C. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, that's right. In a letter to U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Granger announced she would be stepping down as chair of the Appropriations Committee. And Granger said she will do everything in her, quote, power to ensure a seamless transition into the next fiscal year. And like you mentioned, she has already announced she will not be seeking re-election in 2024. And this announcement from Granger came following the House passing a $1.2 trillion spending package, and she was one of the 6 Texas Republican representatives to vote yes on that budget. And the House Appropriations Committee is one of the most important and powerful in Congress. Members of the committee are responsible for bill proposals and budget considerations, and the committee currently comprises of 34 Republicans and 27 Democrats who make changes and recommendations to the full chamber. And in anticipation of who will take over this chairmanship, we've seen Tom Cole out of Oklahoma emerge, saying he is intending to be a candidate for the position, and already has California Representative Ken Calvert endorsing him, saying, quote, he's a friend, a scholar, a conservative, and a patriot. So
A patriot.
so
Stamp of approval if I ever heard one.
yeah, but just an interesting development for one of the most powerful committees in Congress, Kay Granger stepping down from her position.
Big stuff. Thank you, Cam. Bradley, coming to you. This piece, fascinating, and particularly in light of all of the runoff anticipation and the primary results in Speaker Phelan's race. We're seeing a lot of members in the House kind of jockey behind the scenes and have more public conversations, even one coming forward and saying he was going to run against the Speaker. And you wrote a piece this week after interviewing a more typically quiet and kind of moderate member of the House, and he began speaking up on the speakership. Walk us through your interview with him.
So he told me, quote, Jan Lozano told me, quote, this is not the time to continue a civil war. We need a complete and total reset with a leader that will work to unite the legislative branch and executive branch to the extent that it's possible. Lozano joined Representative Tony Tinderholt in authoring an op-ed that posited Phelan's speakership is over, that reforms need to be made to how the House is conducted, including banning Democratic chair appointments. Now, the reason this is notable, Lozano is a chairman, and he is...
As is Oliverson, who jumped in to challenge Phelan.
As is Oliverson, yep. And then He's typically quiet, like you said, doesn't rock the boat on much, and he's moderate. On the various scorecards, Mark P. Jones comes to mind. He was, I think, after the post-special sessions, the second most liberal member of the House based on the rating system they do. And so it was interesting to see him come out kind of swinging hard at Phelan, who appointed him to that position, and also the fact that he's a former Democrat. He flipped parties in, I think it was 2012, after his first session in 2011 that followed redistricting. And so it's an interesting kind of combination of factors here. And it's, Tony Tinderholt, hitting the speaker on stuff is not surprising at this point.
Totally.
But Jan
He ran
Lozano,
against the speaker.
Right.
Yeah.
Jan
Last
Lozano
cycle.
coming out alongside Tinderholt, given all these other factors, is noteworthy.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows what the primary results did and what the kind of chaos that it introduced into the House.
Yeah, absolutely. So why did Lozano begin taking this stance?
Lozano said he was displeased with the process of Ken Paxton's impeachment. He voted for it back in May of last year. At the time, he also submitted a state journal statement that criticized the process and the speed of the investigation and the announcement of the articles and then the vote in a short amount of time in terms of introducing it publicly and then having the vote. It's a common criticism of the impeachment, so it's not like he's voicing something new there. But then after the primary, Lozano said the message was clear from the GOP voters, things needed to be changed. Specifically, he wants a solely GOP-nominated speaker, no Democratic chairs, and some other rules changes like the Hastert rule, which requires a certain majority, whether it's a simple majority or a two-thirds majority of the GOP caucus to support a bill before it comes to the floor for a vote. The Senate kind of operates like this within its GOP caucus. There's a lot more control by the lieutenant governor from the top down because there's fewer members, and they actually have a supermajority. But that's the kind of things that Lozano is hoping for, and he's not the only one. There are others talking about this actively right now as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. So what are the chances of Lozano and others who are voicing this kind of discontent getting what they are looking for?
That's a big question. It's like I said before, it's a numbers game. Whoever gets to 76 wins. And there are 86 Republicans, but
So they have what they need.
They have what they need, but it's not a surefire bet because the Democratic caucus exists. You can't just will them out of the equation here. But then, there's always the threat of a Strauss-like coalition of, about a dozen Republicans joining with the Democratic caucus and naming a speaker. And that's exactly why Democratic chairs is a thing. This tradition discussion that's just window dressing. The real reason it happens is because the minority party controls a significant stake in the House. There is no supermajority by Republicans, and so they can't lock out Democrats entirely. And so in order to prevent that coalition speaker with a very small number of Republicans and all Democrats, they have given Democrats some positions of authority that then takes away those votes from a potential Strauss-like bid. That may happen again. And also, Phelan's not dead yet. He is very much in the mix. Despite what Lozano and Tinderholt said in their op-ed, his speakership's not over yet. There's still very much possibility that he maintains that, provided he wins first and foremost, of course, right? Wins the runoff. Which
makes it very interesting for Lozano and Oliverson et al. For who returns.
Everything's up in the air right now, and there's a lot of behind-the-scenes jockeying, and there will continue to be. But we have to hit the runoff result first before we really see how things shake out.
Yeah. Curious if there will be other speaker candidate announcements before the runoff results come in.
Mm-hmm.
And if there aren't, after the runoff results happen, you will, I'm sure, see a flood, especially if Phelan loses.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Brad, thanks for your coverage, and definitely go check out that interview at the Texan.news. Cameron, coming back to you, the governor has issued an executive order to address anti-Semitism on college campuses. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Greg Abbott issued this executive order to address, quote, acts of anti-Semitism in institutions of higher education. The order addressed 3 areas of policy that institutions of higher ed in Texas must abide by. In the order, it will require a review and update of free speech policies at Texas colleges, requiring them to, quote, establish appropriate punishments, including expulsion from the institution. The order also addresses 2 student groups by name, the Palestinian Solidarity Committee and Students for Justice in Palestine. I'm sorry, I just ran on both. That was 2 different names. The Palestine Solidarity Committee and Students for Justice in Palestine. Just want to make sure I'm clear there. Stating they will be, quote, disciplined for violating campus policies. Abbott also goes on to state in the executive order that part of the government code, section 448.001, will be required to be included in the university free speech policies. And what's interesting is we saw the Fire Institute, that's a free speech and expression organization. They came out and sort of towed the line, drawing a distinction on the definition that was used in the executive order and the fact that student groups were singled out in this executive order. And there was also a response from Manhattan Institute Senior Fellow Chris Rufo. So there's lots of discussion currently happening in regard to this executive order, all revolving around the ideas of what is free speech, what is campus free speech. So this is going to be something I'll be exploring more this week. If our listeners are interested in checking out a deeper discussion on that, stay tuned for my newsletter.
Ooh. Plug the newsletter. And folks, if you've not already subscribed to the Texan and gotten access to our 8 new newsletters and 3 new podcasts, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing? Go to subscribe to texan.news/subscribe. Sign up.
And make sure you check your spam inbox.
Yes. Last week we sent out, everyone on our email list got all access to our newsletters. This week, it's your subscribers, as is the plan. So certainly go to the Texan.news, subscribe, get access to everything. It's exciting stuff, and everyone's put a lot of work into it, and it's great content, if I do say so myself. So killing it, team. Okay. Speaking of someone who's killing their newsletters, Matthew, we're coming to you. The Department of Justice announced the arrest of 5 men in South Texas for supplying firearms to Mexican drug cartels. Wow. Give us the details.
That's right, Mackenzie. This is actually a occurrence we report on pretty frequently when state or federal officials run into individuals who are helping supply Mexico drug cartels with firearms from the United States. So the Department of Justice announced this week that Gerardo Rafael Perez Jr. of Laredo, who was age 23, is accused of leading a group that obtained over 100 firearms in Texas and smuggled them into Nuevo Laredo. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher that name. Tamaulipas, Mexico.
Tamaulipas.
For drug trafficking cartels. He and 5 others were indicted and arrested in South Texas as being part of an operation to supply the cartels with firearms. Some of the men involved acted as straw purchasers, where they lied to obtain firearms from licensed gun dealers or purchased them from private sellers. Some of the firearms obtained by the group include the civilian versions of military-type firearms, including the FN SCAR rifle, the Browning 1919, a semi-automatic version of the belt-fed machine gun that's been a mainstay in the military for eons, and the Barrett 50 cal, which I'm told is highly popular with the drug cartels south of the border, and other high-powered semi-automatic rifles. While the flow of drugs coming north is a constant battle for law enforcement, the flow of guns going south to supply and arm the cartels is also a constant problem. According to officials, thousands of firearms are being smuggled from the U.S. to Mexico each year, with estimates ranging between 200,000 and as high as 500,000.
Wow. Crazy story, and definitely worth also going and checking out at the Texan.news. Matt, thank you so much. Cameron, we're coming to you. Some new numbers came in this week about opioid overdoses and homicide rates in Travis County here in Austin. Tell us what you found.
Yeah, so there was a Austin City Council meeting on public safety where we saw the Austin Travis County EMS give a presentation that revealed some interesting numbers in regard to opioid overdoses. They said Travis County now has twice as many opiate overdose deaths than any other county in Texas per capita. And per capita is a term that is used in economic and statistical analysis. That means per person. So very interesting for that to come out. They also mentioned in 2018 there were about 30 overdoses per month, and, quote, now we're averaging about 100 overdoses a month. They also went into some different strategies they've been employing with trying to curtail the issue, whether it be Narcan administration or a bridge program for those who have overdosed, getting them into a long-term care facility. So there's the overdose aspect that was touched on. And then I came across some other numbers that had to do with the homicide rates here in Austin. And there was an analysis that was done that showed from 2012 to 2019, Austin experienced a stable homicide rate of 3.44 per 100,000 residents as the population continued to grow. So you might expect those numbers to go up as we've seen Austin and Texas see a massive growth in population. But as we've seen in 2020, the national homicide rate did increase 27%, but the analysis states that, quote, one might have expected 33 homicides, yet 46 occurred here in Austin. And then they also go into some additional numbers they highlighted. There was the national homicide rate in 2021 was 33% higher than in 2019. But in Austin, it was 142% higher than expected. And then in 2022, it was 24% higher nationally than in 2019, but 107% higher in Austin. So we're seeing as homicide rates are creeping up nationwide, it's growing exponentially, it appears, here in Austin. And so we've seen people throw around different reasons why this is occurring. We saw a big name, Daniel Lebowitz. He's the founder of Kind Snacks, and he was a big supporter of Jeremy Silverstein, who was running against Jose Garza in the Travis County DA race. And he sort of attributed these numbers to some of the policies of Jose Garza. So just some interesting numbers that I thought readers would want to know about, because it's not just something you're seeing as you're walking through downtown Austin or around the city. It's actually being represented in the stats now. So just something interesting that I came across there.
Yeah, absolutely. Also worth going and checking out. Cameron, thank you.
Well,
now people are going to be like, okay, what about the stories she didn't say were worth checking out? I've said so many are worth it this pod.
they're all worth checking out.
It's your new good stuff.
Watch me get hate emails about that this week. Thank you, Cam. Bradley, let's talk about the Texas GOP chair's race. You were to preview. Give us a rundown.
Currently, there are 4 candidates in the race: Abraham George, Dana Myers, Weston Martinez, and Ben Armenta. George is the latest entry in the race. Notable, he was running against Candy Noble for Texas House, and before that, he was the Collin County GOP chair, a big Paxton ally. He announced earlier this month, in a clearly very coordinated manner, minutes after Matt Rinaldi announced he wouldn't seek re-election. And right after George announced, Paxton came out and endorsed George. And then a few minutes after that, Rinaldi endorsed George. So clearly this was coordinated. This was planned. But those two supportive figures, I think, kind of puts him in pole position, at least for the moment. You know, things
pole
could
position,
change.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a horse race term, I believe.
And a racing term, like a car racing term, motorsport.
Well, I think it started with horses.
Probably, as horses
Horses,
existed before
yes,
cars. But,
exactly. And horse racing existed before car racing.
Obviously, Brad, horses were before cars.
Thanks for putting the final nail on that.
I'm sure to mansplain, Bradley.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So, in my mind, right now he's the front runner, though things can change wildly. I think the convention at which someone's going to be elected is May. It's right before the primary, I think.
23rd through the 25th.
There you go. You had it down. It's almost like we were just planning on how we're going to go and when.
Yeah.
Then you have Dana Myers, who is the current Texas GOP vice chair. She ran on the same ticket, essentially, as Rinaldi. And she announced her run against Rinaldi back in January before he had announced he's not going to run for re-election. That had been brewing for a while behind the scenes. And finally, in January, she made her run official. She has a large backing from the Texas Federation of Republican Women, who is a massive bloc in GOP activist circles. And that right there makes her formidable, let alone if she can build onto other segments of these factions that we see in the party right now. Weston Martinez is a familiar name and a frequent flyer in Texas campaign world. What?
Pole position, frequent flyer. I like this. Keep going.
Okay.
That's good.
He's
phenomenal.
He's the only one that has signed the Texit Pledge and thus could receive a boost from the Texas Nationalist Movement, provided its members are organized enough to become delegates and vote in a block together for Martinez. Now that's notable because there was the scrap between TNM and Rinaldi when he rejected their petition to put a Texit question on the GOP primary ballot in March. They submitted, I think it was like 140,000 signatures. Many of them were electronic signatures submitted through DocuSign, basically. And Rinaldi ruled that, and the party ruled that that's not a legitimate way to submit signatures. It has to be wet ink, essentially. So which is a massive thing, and there's a lot of people who don't realize everything that's in the party platform when you ask them about it. And there's just a lot to this. And
specifically the priorities that they lay out.
Priorities, yes.
Yeah, the 10 or so priorities that are laid out. As
the platform has hundreds of things in it, right?
Yes.
So overall, this is going to be another interesting proxy fight between the competing factions of this party. And May 23rd through the 25th is going to be the epicenter of it. 10,000 delegates usually go to this thing. They'll
in a
elect
presidential year, it's usually
more.
high attendance, so it'll probably hit around that
Okay.
number.
They're going to be who's going to elect the next party chair for 2 years, and then they'll be off to the races. And by then we'll have some more clarity on, or right after that we'll have more clarity on these runoffs and how that's going to shake out.
Yeah,
So
certainly.
a lot to be decided in May.
Absolutely. Bradley, thank you. Cameron, going back to you. City of Austin has selected a new city manager. It's familiar to a lot of folks. Give us the details.
Yeah, they've settled on their selection of former Dallas city manager T.C. Broadell. Is it Broadnax? Oh, it's not a silent X. Interesting. Well, we've
I
covered.
think I could be totally wrong.
Someone in the comments. Someone, that's the fastest way to get the right answer is to give the wrong one.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, so
Yes.
someone will let us know. But he began his role as the Dallas city manager in 2017. Previously served as city manager in a variety of different cities. In Tacoma, Washington, he was an assistant city manager in San Antonio and also a city in Florida. And then what was interesting, like I mentioned, we've reported on some of his dealings as city manager in Dallas. It's been fraught with some different difficulties. Notably, there was some disagreements between him and the Dallas mayor, Eric Johnson, where Eric Johnson said him and Broadnax did not see eye to eye on some issues. In 2022, Broadnax's position as Dallas city manager was uncertain at one point, where the city council actually considered firing him over handling of 911 call center wait times and hiring practices for the city. But after he said he would address these concerns, he retained his position as the city manager. And the Austin City Council now, after the selection, will finalize that in a vote on April 4th.
Wow. Exciting stuff.
Exciting
Stuff. And certainly somebody we've covered in different capacities in different areas of the state before his move to Austin. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cameron. And last, but certainly not least, Matt, we're coming back to you. Texas skies are about to play host to a celestial spectacle. Matt, this intro is
I was reading through it.
is phenomenal. A celestial spectacle. This is like a tongue
twister.
I can't even say it. Basically, the eclipse is coming to Texas. This is exciting. The last story you wrote got unbelievable traction. Amazing stuff. Walk us through what's going to happen on Monday, April 8th.
Well, it got a lot of traction because there's a lot of interest, particularly in the last one. But this one, I think there's even more interest.
Why might that be?
Did you? What's
I said, why might that be?
Why? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me explain. So, just a quick question. Did you see the last eclipse back in October?
No.
Did you get to watch it?
I didn't.
You didn't? Oh my gosh.
I know.
Well, guess what? You've got one more shot. So, in October, we experienced an annular eclipse, which is sometimes referred to as the Ring of Fire because of the distance between the Earth and the Moon. The Moon can't quite block out the entire sun, so you end up with this Ring of Fire. And you're required to use special viewers to view the whole thing because even the edges of the sun can still burn your retinas. That is different from this eclipse, and it is a total eclipse coming up. A total eclipse, the moon is
Total
positioned
eclipse
to
of the
try to
heart?
completely block out. And so, according to experts on this issue, which I hate to say cite experts, but I'm going to, the temperature is supposed to drop about 10 degrees. Animals are supposed to act real funny. It's supposed to get real dark and be sort of this strange twilight sort of atmosphere. And it's just a very surreal moment during the what they call the moments of totality. Now, the actual shadow is kind of a path that will form a stripe across the state. In the center of it, where you'll have absolute totality, is going to be centered somewhere around Eagle Pass, and it's going to run across the state, exiting somewhere around Texarkana. And so the further you get from the center of the shadow, the eclipse becomes more of a partial eclipse. But the closer you get to the center, not only does it become more total, but the eclipse actually lasts longer. And so one of the places that experienced both eclipse passes is the city of Kerrville. A lot of people coming there. The moments of totality is supposed to be around 4 minutes and some change. And you're actually seeing NASA partner up with the city of Kerrville this time. They're going to do a big event that's free to the public. You got to get a ticket, though, at Lewis Hayes Park there on the river, where they're going to have scientists giving speeches. They're going to have live music, all sort of stuff, a live broadcast as the moment goes down. I'm also hearing that hotels are, if you haven't got one, it's going to be difficult finding a hotel. That a lot of rooms are being booked up. Airbnbs being booked up. Texas Parks and Wildlife put out a statement, saying there's some 30-something state parks that lie within the band of totality. But I mean, they are, if they're not already booked up, they're getting close to being booked up. A lot of people expected to come in from this, actually even holding over for a couple of days. So yeah, a lot of enthusiasm on this particular one. And I think, while eclipses of various different types and sorts aren't necessarily uncommon, this particular one is, in that the next total eclipse that can be viewed from the United States is going to occur decades from now. So this will actually be the last eclipse for a lot of people, since the next one is on August of 2024, I believe.
Or 2045, I think. 2045, right?
Well, according to the Texan.news, it's going to be August 23rd, 2044.
2044. There we go. We got there eventually.
Yeah. The moment of totality. Is that a scientific term?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what NASA refers to it as.
Very
So
interesting.
I guess it's scientific.
Yeah.
Matt would know. Matt would know. No, when you're talking about hotels being booked up, Matt, my husband and myself, our house is going to be a hotel for family coming into town.
Oh,
for
really?
The eclipse. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think
Austin's right on the edge of it, right?
Yeah, I think so. But it's Monday. It's that, like you said, that Monday, and family's coming into town and staying with us. And
My family's in Kerrville. And so my parents' house has also turned into a hotel. We've got friends and family from all over. I'm going to take a hammock just in case I have to set it up in the backyard.
do a little camping on the hammock. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be awesome.
But yeah, so I'll be heading that direction for the eclipse. And so it's going to be pretty cool. I'm hoping that like the October one, there were no clouds that day. It was a completely clear afternoon, and so it was just a phenomenal place to view it from. And so fingers crossed, I'm hoping the same occurs for everyone this on Monday the 8th.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll certainly go check it out at the Texan.news. Thank you, Matthew. Gentlemen, we are at 58 minutes already, so we're going to go through Tweetery pretty quickly here.
Wow.
Heads up. Heads up. Here we go. Brad, let's start with you. What did you see on Twitter?
There is a North Texas man who is running for president. And
How does that compare to Florida Man?
Well, it's a lot more interesting than Florida Man, and it's not, who was the guy that dropped out? Binkley. It's not Ryan Binkley.
Oh, Ryan Binkley.
It is a man, not with no name, but with a new name. And the new name is literally anybody else. He changed his name legally and is running for president.
Reminds me of Larry Secede Kilgore.
Yes. And I assume he is not happy with the two presumptive nominees for the major parties, and so he is running
up.
as we see Mickey Mouse get votes every year. Literally anybody else. We'll see if he gets some significant number of support.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, that sort of leads into my tweetery, is in this Harvard-Harris poll that was just released, 62% of voters say the country needs another choice other than Biden and Trump, and 55% say they would consider an independent moderate candidate in 2024.
55% say they'd consider, and 62% say they need somebody other than Trump or Biden.
Right. So
Wow.
if there is another name on there, literally anybody else,
Who knows?
people can vote for it.
Well, that was a big contention that Haley made in her run against Trump, that polling shows most people want someone other than the two, than Biden or Trump, and she still got shellacked. So
Yeah.
I think when push comes to shove, people are going to, by and large, vote for Trump or Biden. Like, obviously, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
The other tweeter I had was Texas Ethics Commission is advancing a rule, an interesting rule. This was broken by Mark McKay, who runs the Texas Voice. They are looking into a requirement that influencers disclose if they're being paid for political advertising. So we saw a lot of these random conservative political influencers on Twitter just blasting out messages. Charlie Kirk was doing it. I can't remember other ones, but
Poso.
Donald J. Trump,
Yeah.
or
Pacific.
Donald Trump Jr., all these guys. But then you had a bunch of lower level ones, and I think it was Current Revolt broke that this group called Influenceable was shopping this around and paying people $50 for a tweet, and they were getting a lot of takers for it, obviously, and that happened during the impeachment stuff. I think we saw a little bit of it during the property tax fight, but particularly impeachment, and we saw it was Defend Texas Liberty that at least had made one payment to them, to Influenceable. And that's kind of how they found it. That's how Current Revolt found the paper trail. But this would require these people to disclose that. I'm not sure how that's enforceable, but
I don't remember. Did the Current Revolt story show which individuals were receiving payment from Influenceable? Or was it just the fact that Influenceable was being paid?
it was a transaction from Defend Texas Liberty to Influenceable. There was no way to trace the rest of it.
After that.
But
right.
Current Revolt had text messages from Influenceable to influencers asking them to tweet for $50 a tweet. Yeah. And maybe that pricing changes based on the significance of the influencer, right? I'm sure Jack Posobiec has a higher rate than just some rando with 15,000 followers, so but this would be an interesting change, and if they're able to even enforce that, which I don't know how they would, that would make for a lot of interesting reading in more campaign finance reports.
Yeah.
Because these are, a lot of them, if they're being paid to do that, that's political advertising. That's not just someone giving their opinion. And it was pretty noticeable.
Political speech is what
right.
the argument is, yeah.
It's pretty noticeable that a lot of people that had nothing to do with Texas politics that were jumping into this debate.
So they would be required to report this to the Texas Ethics Commission, or let's say the post itself would have to have a label on it?
Both, I think.
Interesting.
Now, they haven't finalized the rules, so there's still some probably tweaking to do.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it'd be both, and that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Especially because it was very effective, and it's probably going to be utilized again, and probably still being utilized. But, yeah, I'll be most interested to see if this thing is something that can actually enforce and make ground on, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see the enforcement mechanism, because let's say they do enact a rule change like this. There's ways to get around that. It could be just a conversation on the phone with the influenceable and the influencer, where it's not, we're going to send you the exact wording in an email where a paper trail is established. It's a more general conversation about post. But there's this issue we want you to address, just leaving it more vague. And so that tagging on a post or in the reporting, it's the establishing of a paper trail between the payment and the post. Will be interesting to see how they track that.
Receipts.
Yeah.
And every time you close one pathway off,
another one opens.
And that happens in all circles of,
Totally.
of these political machines, basically.
But just the fact that they're seeing this as something that needs to be addressed is interesting enough. So.
Yeah.
And if you like this conversation, tune in to send me some stuff Monday. But in all seriousness, you definitely should. This dovetails with a tweet I want to chat about. Brian Phillips from TBPF tweeted something interesting in response to a Texas Monthly article in a little bit similar to what Holly posted earlier this week. Party officials in several counties have adopted resolutions against the grocery store magnate for a litany of alleged offenses against the state Republican platform. So Texas Monthly published that article. I definitely recommend you go read Holly's. It's really in-depth, has some great information. In response to that tweet from Texas Monthly, Brian Phillips, he's the chief communications guy at TBPF, tweeted, Texas Monthly doesn't like billionaires until it does. Hashtag hypocrites. Hashtag TextLedge. But I thought this was notable because I think the conversation surrounding billionaires' involvement in Texas politics is a lightning rod every single election cycle and during the legislative session too, in one way or another. We see folks like Tim Dunn, Ferris Wilkes, whoever it might be lambasted by mainstream media for their involvement in funding groups like DTL or whatever it might be. The Daily Wire has come under fire for that as well, as they've been funded by the Wilkes. Wild. And then you see this as well, a billionaire with a different political mindset is entering the same arena and having a big impact on how races shape up. Yeah.
But you see it, the stark difference, though, is these local groups you're saying are passing resolutions condemning the actions. But what we see when more of the Republican right-wing billionaires put money into causes they care about, there's this blanketing of negative media coverage about it, and they use very hyperbolic language, calling it far right, dark money, so it's a difference of approach.
True, but also George Soros is blasted every time he puts money into anything, and right-wing media loves to lambast him for that.
If Soros is in a headline, media gets excited about the click-through rates.
Oh yeah,
of that
and it's notable.
situation.
Absolutely, we've written on Soros,
Totally.
him donating to Jose Garza, and
yes,
really flipping that script there and putting him in office. Not like that was a lot of money they put in to
changed the course of the
county
race in a lot
DA's
of ways.
office.
Yeah.
So it absolutely is notable, but billionaire is in the eye of the beholder, I guess. Like the ability to, all these guys are putting their money in. You wrote about Mackenzie Scott donating to all these, she's Bezos's ex-wife, to these various causes. Like they're all doing it, and it's, if you want to attack their motives or their preferred policies, that's one thing. But just saying, oh, these billionaires are getting involved, they're all doing it, and each side really has a billionaire that's helping them, or multiple.
I'd be curious the breakdown of billionaires in Texas and how many contribute to each party. That would be an interesting situation at some point. Obviously, the oil and gas billionaires play a huge role, and that's what the media tends to go after. Yeah, Matt.
I have 2 cents on the topic.
Bring it on.
So you have billionaires on the right and billionaires on the left that are involved in Texas politics, donating to campaigns, all that sort of stuff. And I think, it's fair for the political activists on those sides to, attack each other. That's politics. I think what I would like to put an emphasis on is that we as the media, whenever we report on a billionaire from the right or a billionaire for the left being involved, to stick to the facts and not frame one as an esteemed, respected entrepreneur that's cherished by all, as opposed to the other, being, the dark money trying to own the state, sort of thing. So it's from our perspective, we just need to be neutral on how they're being involved, what they're doing, etc. maybe what the two sides are saying, if it's relevant, but avoid any commentary on our own as far as, portraying one in a positive or negative light. At the end of the day, everybody has a right to be civically involved, whether you're putting a $5 campaign contribution down or a $5 million campaign contribution down. So that's my 2 cents.
Great point. And I think, again, it's not a bad thing for media to report on the involvement of huge stakeholders or big donations. Like, that's not worth knowing. It's certainly newsworthy and noteworthy. But how it's framed is really what we're criticizing here. Yeah.
Stop the billionaires for me, but not for thee thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
And also, county parties have total leeway to criticize somebody's involvement if it's against their party platform. Totally fine. Mm-hmm. Let's just be fair about it. Everyone's doing it. No, great points, Matt. And I think that's really worth noting, too, is how media covers it and our aim in that. Matt, your tweeter here is fun, so I want to end on your fun one. What do you got?
Oh, well, thank you. I thought it was fun, too. So it's sort of this day in history, but it was actually yesterday in history from the date that we're recording this podcast. And that is that on March 27th, 1978, Schoolhouse Rock released the I'm Just a Bill episode. One of my favorites.
Matt, I'm raising my hand. You have to call on me.
Oh, I'm calling on you, Mackenzie.
Okay. Can you sing it for us?
Remember how whenever we started this off, I said that I wasn't happy with my editor today?
Yes.
No, I cannot.
Oh, man. Understandable.
It would get turned into a gift that will be recirculated in Slack in perpetuity.
That was my aim, was to get something, a little bit more long-lasting, but that's fair.
But it is a frequent reference of mine in relation to Texas Ledge all the time. So, but yeah, fun little point in history there.
Absolutely. Very fun. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Happy weekly Roundup Day.
What?
You're just typing, and Brad just looks at me ominously all the time. I just think I'm in trouble with him.
Am I not allowed to type?
Well, you're not allowed to type and look like this.
You were glaring at me.
I was not glaring at you. Lord in heaven, let's end this before we get into this fight. Folks, we appreciate you listening, and we will catch you on next week's episode.